My name's Mark, I'm 46 years old, and 6 years ago, I made the worst kind of promise. One spoken only in action, never in words. I promised to stay. I promised to be there even when I wasn't seen. I promised to carry the weight no one else wanted. That's what stepping in looks like. Not with grand gestures, with repetition, with quiet sacrifice, with showing up. Lisa had been a widow for 2 years when I met her. Her husband died in a rollover on I-35, coming back from some business trip, some road he never should have been on that late at night. She cried when she told me, more from habit than grief. That's how numb she was. Her smile was broken then, like it had been stapled back onto her face, and her voice always had this tired hush to it, like every word had to sneak past sorrow to get out. She had 2 kids. Zach, 13, already too tall for his age, and Emily, 11, always in motion, always just a little too loud, as if silence meant weakness. The 3 of them were a unit built around loss, and I was the outsider standing at the window, tapping gently to be let in. At first, I didn't even try to be a parent. I was just present. I changed oil, cooked on weekends, brought groceries over when I knew Lisa's shifts ran late. Then, I was helping with homework, driving them to school when Lisa's car broke down, fixing clogged drains and loose hinges. Started small. It always starts small. Then one day you look up, and everything's on your shoulders. We moved in together after a year. I left my apartment behind, sold half my stuff, consolidated bills, co-signed accounts. I wasn't just her boyfriend anymore. I was the man in the house. And in houses like ours, the man in the house doesn't get to coast. He earns his place every day. Zach never made it easy. He'd watch me from the hallway when I kissed Lisa goodnight, eyes narrow like I'd stolen something. At first I thought it was grief, unprocessed and sharp. Then I thought maybe it was guilt. Survivor's guilt twisted into resistance. But after a while, I stopped pretending it was complicated. It was hate, quiet, passive, polished, but hate all the same. It started with names. He never called me anything. Just him, or your boyfriend, or Mark. Like we were coworkers sharing a cubicle. The first time it stung was during a parent-teacher conference. His English teacher asked if I was his dad. Before I could answer, Zach cut in. He's just my mom's husband. Not stepdad. Not guardian. Just husband, like I was the mailman who got lost and stayed too long. Still, I tried. God help me, I tried. I drove him to football practice 3 times a week. When his cleats tore, I bought him new ones. When he said he wanted to get into motorcycles, I took him to dealerships, walked him through specs, taught him the basics of safety and handling. I paid for his safety course. I helped him get his learner's permit. I co-signed the policy when he finally picked out a used Yamaha. I watched his back every mile he rode, even when he never once looked over his shoulder for me. When he got that scholarship, first in our family to get one, he posted a photo on Instagram. Him holding the letter, his mom beside him, all smiles. The caption read, "Thanks to the people who always believed in me." And then, tagged, Lisa, a coach, a friend from school. I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't in the caption. I wasn't anywhere. Lisa said, "He's just a teenager. He doesn't know how to express things yet." But that was a lie. Zach expressed himself just fine, in all the ways that told me I was nothing. Emily was different, warmer. She'd sit with me in the garage, ask questions about engines, show me drawings she made at school. When she got into music, I bought her first used violin off Craigslist. When she failed her first audition, I held her while she cried. She didn't call me dad either, but at least she didn't pretend I wasn't there. Still, even she fell into Lisa's silence. I remember one Christmas, maybe our 3rd together. I bought Zach a leather jacket he'd been drooling over for months, saved up for it, hid it in the attic, wrapped it myself. When he opened it, he smiled for the first time in weeks, a real wide-eyed teenager's grin. Then he turned to Lisa and said, "Thanks, Mom." She didn't correct him. She just smiled. I sat there, on the couch, bourbon in hand, pretending the tree lights weren't blurring behind my eyes. That was the thing. Lisa never defended me. Not once. She was a peacekeeper. She'd smooth over insults like spilled milk. Don't take it personal. He's going through a phase. It's just hard for him. Hard? You know what's hard? Waking up at 5 a.m. to beat traffic so you can make enough overtime to afford 2 sets of school supplies because the kids don't want to share. Hard as replacing brake pads in a freezing garage because Zach thought he could race his friends down a gravel road and shredded them in one afternoon. Hard as standing in the bleachers every Friday night, rain or shine, cheering for a boy who won't look at you when the game's over. But I did it. I did it all. Because I believed that presence earns love. That time buys trust. That if I kept showing up, one day, they'd see me. I ignored the signs. Every cold shoulder, every rolled eye, every time Zach asked Lisa for permission instead of me. Every time Emily took my help but thanked her mother. Every family photo where I stood on the edge like an extra. Every holiday where Dad was a ghost at the table and I was just the man holding the carving knife. The truth was obvious. I wasn't a father. I was a utility. And the more I gave, the more invisible I became. Still I stayed. Because there's a sickness to men like me. A hope that refuses to die. A belief that maybe next time, maybe next holiday, maybe next graduation, the mask will slip and someone will finally say the thing you've waited years to hear. But hope is the most dangerous kind of delusion. And mine was rotting in plain sight. It was a week before Zach's graduation. The yard was already cluttered with party prep. Balloons on the porch. Fold-out tables in the garage. Lisa had laminated baby pictures and was planning some slideshow with music he'd picked. Country rap or whatever garbage passed for celebration now. I'd bought his suit. Charcoal gray, slim fit, tailored. Took time off work for fittings. Paid for the class ring too, custom engraving. His jersey number. A blue stone that matched his old man's eyes. I even handled the limo, black stretch, 10 seats, enough for his whole crew. And then I asked him the one thing I'd wanted since I first stepped in. We were outside. He was cleaning his bike, the Yamaha I co-signed, the one I maintained because he never remembered oil changes. I stood there holding 2 mugs of coffee, one for him, even though he never drank it, and said, "So, you want me at the ceremony? Maybe afterward we grab a picture, just the 2 of us, like a memory." He didn't look up, just kept wiping the chrome like he hadn't heard. I waited. Then he said it. "Yeah, my dad's coming. So I don't think you should stand next to me. Might make it awkward." Awkward. That word sat between us like a tumor. I stood there, coffee going cold in my hand, staring at the back of his head, waiting for him to laugh, to say he was kidding. But he never looked up. He meant it. The man who hadn't seen him in years was Dad. I was just the discomfort standing nearby, the shadow they'd crop out of the photos. Awkward. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My throat locked up. So I turned, walked back into the house, and sat in my truck. Just sat. Didn't drive. Didn't cry. Just stared out through the windshield like it might offer answers I didn't want to hear. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed in the garage scrolling through receipts, printouts, insurance policies. Every bit of paperwork that tethered me to a boy who had just severed the rope. I found a folder I'd kept, Zach's bike title, the financing documents, the training course receipt. Everything I'd paid for itemized. Every choice I made thinking maybe this will be the one that breaks through. By 5 a.m., the sun barely hinting behind the trees, I made my decision. The Yamaha went on Craigslist, clean condition, quick sale, price to move. Got 3 calls before breakfast. A guy drove in from Waco by 2 p.m. Handed me a stack of bills and didn't even haggle. I didn't clean the garage. I left the tire streaks, the oil stain Zach had said he'd mop up a year ago. Let them stay like a crime scene. I used the cash to book a bus ticket. One way. Georgia. That's where his father lived. That's where Zach said the real man was. So I figured, go find him. I left the ticket on the kitchen table with a note. Let that man be proud now. Lisa found it before I got home. She was pacing the hallway, holding the envelope like it was radioactive. You sold his bike? I nodded. She stared at me, eyes wild. You didn't even talk to us. I looked her in the face, and something in me snapped. something cold, something final. No, I said. That talk should have happened when I asked for respect, and nobody gave it. She flinched like I'd hit her. Zach came storming in 30 minutes later. His face was fire. He didn't ask. He didn't breathe. He screamed. You ruined everything. That was mine. You had no right. I held up the registration. My name's on the title. My signature's on the loan. My bank account paid the premiums. You didn't even thank me when I handed you the keys. So don't talk to me about rights. He trembled, fists clenched like he might swing. He didn't. He knew better. Deep down, they always do. Lisa stepped between us. You crossed a line, Mark. No, I said. I finally drew one. And I meant it. For the rest of that night, no one said a word to me. Emily sat across from me at dinner, quiet, picking at her food. Then she got up, grabbed an old photo album, and sat with me in the living room. She flipped through the pages without talking. Just looked. There was one of us, her and me. At the county fair, cotton candy stuck in her hair, me laughing. She tapped the page gently and gave me a tiny nod. That was all. It was enough. Later, after everyone went to bed, I poured a bourbon, sat out back on the porch, listening to the cicadas scream into the dark. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was done. And that was the most dangerous version of me. Because a man like me only leaves once. But when he does, he leaves the foundation cracked. The garage sat hollow without the bike. The driveway felt longer. The silence inside the house wrapped around everything like frost. Lisa stayed in our bed, but not near me. She slept on the edge, arms wrapped tight, breathing like someone trapped in a nightmare they wouldn't wake from. Good. Let her feel it. Let them all feel it. Because what they didn't understand was this. I hadn't given up on them. I had stopped betraying myself. 2 days later, Zach was gone. Not a goodbye, not a message, just gone. The Yamaha-shaped void in the garage wasn't enough for him, I guess. He needed distance, too. Lisa said he packed a duffel bag, left before sunrise, caught a bus east. I didn't ask which one. Didn't care. Let him go chase the man whose name he worshipped more than the man who paid for his future. The house felt smaller without his noise. Quieter but not peaceful. Lisa moved through it like a ghost, half mad with the kind of guilt that festers when silence replaces apology. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't touch me. Her anger wasn't clean. It wasn't about the bike or the ticket or even Zach. It was about being forced to face herself. She'd built our home on compromise, on my effort, my money, my patience, and now she was realizing what that foundation had cost. For the first time, she saw what it looked like when I stopped holding it all up. She lasted 5 days before snapping. You couldn't have just waited until after graduation? She said, voice trembling between rage and regret. He was a kid, Mark. A kid. I looked at her across the kitchen counter. The same counter I'd built from salvaged oak, sanded by hand. A kid, I said. He's 18. Old enough to decide who his father is. Old enough to say I'm not it. So now he gets to live with that truth. Her eyes filled. You're cruel. No, I said. I'm consistent. That ended the conversation. Emily, though, she changed. She started spending her afternoons in the garage again, sitting on the old stool while I worked. She didn't ask about Zach. Didn't mention the bike. She'd just hand me tools one by one, like she was trying to speak in a language that didn't need words. Sometimes she'd ask about my childhood, what kind of music I liked, what my father was like, how I learned to fix engines. The small questions that build bridges. The kind that come too late. I answered them all. Calm, honest, measured. Because she deserved truth even if no one else in that house did. One evening, as I was closing the tool chest, she said softly, "He'll regret what he said to you. I think he already does." I looked up. Regret doesn't pay for gas. She frowned. You don't mean that. I do, I said. Regret doesn't rebuild what someone burned. She didn't reply, but she stayed. That was enough. A week passed before the first message came through. Lisa's phone buzzed while she was folding laundry. She went pale when she read it, then wordlessly handed it to me. Dad didn't pick me up. He said he's not around right now. What should I do? I read it twice, then handed it back. What should you do? I said. Tell him to figure it out. Her voice cracked. He's your son. I cut in. Mine was never real, just rented. She started to cry. I didn't move to comfort her. I'd done enough of that for one lifetime. That night, she slept in the guest room. The next morning, I went into town. Needed parts for a transmission job. Stopped by the auto shop where I used to work before opening my own garage. The guys there still knew me. Men who've seen every version of life. Marriages rebuilt, marriages ruined, kids gone bad, parents gone tired. They looked at me with something that wasn't pity. It was respect, heavy and quiet. One of them, Joe, wiped his hands on a rag and said, "Heard about what happened. You did the right thing." I looked up from the counter. "Yeah." He nodded. "Everyone saw how much you gave that family. Everyone. You think we didn't notice you working weekends, buying parts for his bike out of your own pocket? Hell, we all said it. Mark's raising another man's kid like it's his own. And what did you get for it? Disrespect. That boy needed a lesson." I didn't smile. I didn't teach him anything. I just stopped pretending. Joe leaned forward. "That's a lesson. Word travels fast in towns like ours." By the end of the week, everyone knew Zach had left, that Lisa was staying with her sister for a little space, and that Emily was still at home with me. Neighbors would wave a little too long, tilt their heads when they saw me mowing the lawn alone. Sympathy always shows up too late, when it's no longer useful. Emily started cooking dinner with me then. Said it helped her focus. She'd hum while chopping vegetables, trying to fill the silence Lisa left behind. Sometimes she'd glance at me, searching for some version of warmth I couldn't give anymore. I'd nod, tell her the food was good, thank her for helping. Nothing more. She deserved kindness but not illusions. 2 weeks later, another message came in, this time directly to me. "You ruined everything." That was all it said. I read it 3 times before replying. "No, I gave you exactly what you asked for, a chance to build something with the man you put above me. If it didn't work, that's not on me." He didn't reply. He never has. That night, I sat on the porch and watched the town lights flicker against the horizon. Somewhere out there, my stepson was realizing the truth every spoiled heart learns too late. Real fathers don't always share your blood, but they always pay the bill. And when they stop, the world stops with them. Lisa came back 2 days later. No warning. Just walked in with a suitcase. Said she needed to talk. Her voice was brittle, her eyes hollow. I told her to sit. She didn't. She just stood in the doorway like a stranger caught between guilt and pride. "He's staying with his dad's relatives now," she said quietly. "Somewhere outside Macon. He's trying to find work." I nodded. "Good. Maybe he'll learn what work looks like." She frowned. "You think this makes you right? You think this fixes anything?" "No," I said. "It just makes things honest." That word, honest, hung in the air like a bad smell. She hated it because it meant accountability, and Lisa was a woman built on avoidance. She turned away, pacing the room, trying to find a reason to hate me that didn't sound like guilt. "You could have talked to him," she said. "I did," I said. "He told me exactly what he wanted. A father who wasn't me." She shook her head. "You're so cold." "I was warm for 6 years," I said. "It didn't change anything." The silence that followed wasn't the kind that ends. It was the kind that settles in for good, like dust. For a while, she stayed with her sister again. Emily stayed with me. We worked the garden, fixed old projects, learned how to breathe without tiptoeing around anger. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me. Half admiration, half confusion. Like she couldn't decide whether to love me or pity me. That was fine. Pity still meant she saw me. That was more than I'd gotten from the rest of them. The town saw me too. Every trip to the diner, every stop at the gas station, someone would pat my shoulder and say, "He'll come around." Maybe they meant well, but I knew better. Boys like Zach don't come around. They circle back only when they've bled enough pride to recognize the difference between love and obligation. He'll come back one day, I thought. Maybe broke, maybe broken, but he'll come back. And I'll be here. Not waiting, not hopeful, just standing still. The way I've always been. Because when you've given everything, stillness is the only thing left that's yours. 3 months passed. Enough time for Lisa's wedding ring to stop catching the morning light, for her perfume to fade from the hallway. She came back eventually, but not in the way I think she expected. She didn't return to a home. She returned to a boundary. There was no embrace, no apology, just bags at her feet and eyes that couldn't meet mine. I told her where the guest room was. That's where she stayed. She tried to find her old rhythms. Coffee at 6 a.m. Morning laundry, folding towels with that habitual hum in her throat. But it all landed hollow. The house wasn't the same. It wasn't built for her anymore. It was built by me, for a family that no longer existed. Emily stayed close. We didn't talk about it. That was the unspoken agreement. Her presence was enough. She helped in the garage more, asked about jobs, took interest in my work. When I told her she didn't have to, she just shrugged and said, "I want to." Simple as that. Real love doesn't need speeches. One day she asked, "Would you teach me to change a tire?" So I did. Not because she needed to know, but because it was something that connected us without expectation. She never brought up Zach. Not once. But I know she missed him. You can feel the weight of missing people even when no one says their name. It hangs in the corners, sits in their old chairs, hovers near the garage door where their bike used to be. Zach never came back. He stayed in Georgia, bouncing from one job to another, dishwasher, forklift operator, part-time retail clerk. The boy who once mocked trade work now wore grease on his hands. Lisa gave updates in passing, like reading headlines she wished she could ignore. He's working nights now. His aunt says he's drinking more. He hasn't asked for money, yet. I never responded. Let the silence speak. One afternoon she broke. We were in the kitchen. I was fixing a drawer that had come loose. Cheap hinges, stripped screws. She stood at the counter, arms folded. "Maybe," she said, "maybe you went too far." I stopped, stared at the drawer, then looked at her. Too far. Her eyes softened. "He was just a kid, Mark. You were the adult. Maybe he needed grace." I almost laughed. Grace? Lisa, I gave that boy 6 years of grace. 6 years of free rent, full fridge, private rides, weekend projects, fieldside clapping, loan co-signing, holiday gifts. Grace? That house bled grace. She turned away, but I kept going. I begged for connection. I swallowed disrespect. I endured being treated like a second-class citizen in a home I paid to build. And the one time I asked for acknowledgement, I got, "You shouldn't stand next to me. You want to talk about going too far?" That was the line. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. She didn't answer. Just stood there like someone realizing they'd been complicit in a crime too subtle to name. A week later, she moved back into the guest room. Not because I told her to, because she couldn't look me in the eye anymore. She had failed me in silence. And now that silence was permanent. Emily didn't ask questions. She just kept showing up. Kept being present in the smallest, most human ways. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch in the evening, just watching the sun bleed into the tree line. She'd sip sweet tea, I'd sip bourbon, and we'd exist side by side, like two people who'd made it through the same storm from different sides of the glass. She was 17 now, getting ready for college apps. Talked about scholarships, trade programs, maybe even a gap year to work in the shop. I told her I'd support whatever choice she made, as long as it was hers and no one else's. That was the difference. I didn't ask her to love me. I didn't buy her. I just stood where I said I'd be and waited to be seen. And she saw me, not as a replacement, not as a title, as a man. Zach never sent another message. I heard from someone at the tire shop that he was working 2 jobs and still sleeping on a couch. They said he'd been seen outside a club, shouting at someone, clearly drunk. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty. Not because I missed him, because I'd once believed I could save him. That was the lie I had to bury. Fathers can't save children who refuse to see them. At church one Sunday, an older man pulled me aside. Gray beard, firm grip, the kind who's seen too much and stopped pretending life makes sense. "Heard what happened?" he said. "Folks around town talk." I nodded. He leaned in. "You did the right thing. Hard thing, but right. Respect's the only currency that matters in a house. Once it's gone, so is everything." I didn't have to respond. Just nodded, thanked him, moved on. Respect. That word stuck with me. Not love. Not obedience. Not gratitude. Respect. I bought love. I'd earned obedience. I'd waited for gratitude. But I'd been starving for respect. And when it never came, I left the table. Lisa and I stopped speaking altogether. Coexistence. That was the agreement. I didn't ask her to leave. I didn't make threats. I just stopped reaching across a chasm that had only ever widened. Every meal was quiet. Every glance was brief. Every door closed a little harder. Eventually, she packed again. One suitcase. No note. Emily told me after school. She's going back to her sister's. Said it's better this way. I nodded. She watched me. "Are you okay?" I finished my coffee. "Better than I've been in years." That night, she helped me clean the garage. We found an old photo tucked behind a workbench. Zach and me, the first day we brought the Yamaha home. He was smiling. I wasn't. I looked at that photo and heard his voice again, razor sharp in memory. "I don't want you next to me." I put the photo away. Didn't tear it. Didn't frame it. Just closed the box. Because I had finally learned the truth. You cannot beg for a seat at a table you paid to build. You cannot barter respect from people who see you as a resource. You cannot wait for a thank you from someone who believes your effort is owed. So I stopped. Stopped building bridges over rivers they were happy to drown me in. Stopped forgiving slights dressed up as adolescents. Stopped mourning a role I was never truly given. Zach lives with his father's family now. Maybe he's learning. Maybe he isn't. Doesn't matter. He made his choice and I made mine. Emily's still here. Still learning. Still seeing me. Lisa, she visits sometimes. Says she wants to talk things through. I listen, but I don't invite. That door's locked from my side now. This was never about revenge. Never about punishment. This was about survival. Because a man who gives without receiving is not a father, he's a martyr. And martyrs don't get monuments. They get forgotten. So I chose something different. I chose respect, mine, not theirs.